name is Claudia Cruz, and I am the director of the Internship and Experiential Learning Program at the Reno School of Journalism. I also moonlight and work as the managing editor of Noticiero Móvil.
Thank you. Everyone, my name is Dahlia, but everyone calls me Dee. I am the personal finance content creator for Nevada Money Mentors, and today I am going to be conducting our Money Talks podcast. You told me that, you have an extensive background, a lot of experience. So how long have you been working at the university, and kind of how did you end up in Reno?
Well, I have been at the Reno School of Journalism at University of Nevada, Reno for almost 2 years. It'll be 2 years, August 1st. And I arrived to the university after a stint as a reporter for almost 10 years in the San Francisco Bay Area. My very last job was working as a tech reporter, which actually lends itself to this conversation a lot when it comes to money, because you realize how little money you have and you can't start your own company when you live in Silicon Valley and you have roommates and all the things that you see other people have that you wish you had, but because you don't have any money. But prior to Reno, I chose Reno because I was looking to be in a place that's more affordable. And it is one of the things that I struggle with, because I know that I gentrify Reno. I've been gentrified out of communities, especially in New York, as someone who is scratching at the middle class, or like right at the lower end of middle class. It's very difficult to be able to buy a home in places where people make 3 times your own salary. There was an opportunity at the University of Nevada, Reno, which oddly enough paid me a little bit more than I was making in the Bay Area. But because it is more affordable to live here, I was able to choose a city that had a lot of the amenities that I enjoyed as an adult. Like New York, again, 24/7 environment, great restaurants, a river walk. So it's like San Antonio, because you have water and it's just so beautiful. And I can afford to live here, because in the Bay Area, I had roommates until until June before I moved here. So after almost 10 years, I can afford to live by myself. And that, as an adult female, or as an adult, at one point you don't want to feel like you're in a college dorm anymore. So hence no more roommates, and why Reno. That's how I ended up in Reno.
Okay, I like that. That's definitely understandable. Just getting to the point where you're like, I just want to live by myself, by my own rules, do what I want, decorate the way that I want. Definitely understand that. So tell me about your interest in finance. You kind of talked about a couple of things about, not being paid as much living in the Bay Area. So it's kind of, this juggle of where to live, working things out with a roommate. So can you tell me a little bit more about like your interest in finance, and, particular, if you have any specific interests, like if you're into investing or stocks or different things like that?
My interest in finance, I mean, it comes from the fact that I'm poor. I grew up poor. I'm still poor. I'm still a journalist and academic, so I'm going to be poor for the rest of my life. That's one of the things that, I might make money to sustain myself, but I don't expect to become a millionaire. I don't expect to make, if I make 6 figures, it's only because I have a book, right? Eventually, or I'll have more magazine articles. But and most reporters enter this field not because we're looking to become famous. It happens to some people, and there's a lot of churn in the industry now, but some people are legacy reporters. So their parents were reporters, and because of that, they are able to move up a little faster in the field and make more money. But it's very difficult for a woman of color. And it has been, because we're still only 2 or 3% of the media industry. So my interest in finance just comes from the fact that I grew up with a single mom in a very difficult environment in New York, where my neighbors were also poor. And there's a different levels there, where there's a community support system, because we're all poor. So we all share food, and, send your kids over. I have rice and meat, or if I need something, I can borrow sugar, that typical kind of community feel. we did it because we were also poor. So there was a lot of leaning on one another. But I also realized that while my mother was very good at her finances because she had two children and really had to make ends meet, I remember pay stubs from my mother in New York where at minimum wage, she was making $3.25 at the time. And in New York, it went up it went up faster than even here in Nevada, but my mother was already retired. So I think my mother never made more than maybe $5.75 an hour for work. And she was very frugal and tried to teach us frugality. But as you realize, when you're born with no money and you start making a little bit of money as a teenager or a college student, all you want to do is spend it. So I was very, very, very bad at saving money. The pandemic has been the first time I've been able to save, which is ironic because I know that people have lost their jobs and have depleted their savings. But because I'm not going out to restaurants, I'm not traveling to vacation spots, I'm much more focused now. I'm paying down my credit card debt because of the uncertainty of the future. You know, your credit card rate is at 24% interest every month. If you're not paying it down, it doesn't make sense to keep paying that much in debt. So finance became important to me because I was poor. And while I know I'm not going to become rich, I want to, you hit a moment, and every young person as they're adulting will hit this moment when you start thinking about retirement. And I'm far from retirement, but because I'm far from retirement, now is the time to start thinking about retirement. Because if I don't save money, I may not have a house to die in. I always say a house to die in, right? A house to decorate. People can, I need to have extra money for the next 40 years of my life. So that's why I'm finance is something that I wish more people of color, in general, everybody, but financial literacy, that they begin to understand that you have to really figure out, do you have enough money coming in for your lifestyle? And can that sustain you for possibly 80 years in this world? So.
Okay, thank you. I think that's a very great point. I really resonated with what you said about growing up, being poor, not having a lot of money. And then once you start making money, all you want to do is spend it. Definitely, I have been dealing with that. And it kind of gets to the point, like you said, where you have to, be like, look, you can't keep going on like this forever. You have to start saving your money, start preparing, start paying down debts. So I think that was a very good point you brought up. So that brings me to my next question. Are there any current financial goals that you're working towards? So tell me about it.
Absolutely. I'm a big believer in like dream boards or anything where you visualize an intent and you see it every day and you remind yourself. And again, I've been working hard. I have all my credit cards here because I pay them off a little bit every single day. I won't show you my numbers, but I literally have been paying down credit cards. That's one of my goals this year, is to pay down credit card debt. Because again, if you have money in the bank, I don't have a lot of investments. Go back to that original goal, because as a reporter, in our field, you are actually encouraged against investing in individual stocks, especially as a tech reporter. I cannot invest in a Facebook stock, or first of all, I can't afford it. But if I could afford it, I could not invest in Facebook or Google or Apple or DoorDash or Uber, whatever, because I write about those companies. I'm not writing about those companies now, but I foresee possibly writing about those companies again. And I don't want to have that conflict of interest. However, we are allowed to have money in mutual funds. So I have mutual funds, and that's just a diversified portfolio of stocks. And sometimes it includes treasury bonds, which is government money you lend the government pays you back after some time. So I have mutual funds. I have IRA through the school. If people listen to Susie Orman, I think I have a Roth IRA. I have to make sure, but I think I have a Roth IRA as well. There's just different investment vehicles. Some of them allow you to remove the money before retirement with less tax penalties. It depends on the investment vehicle. So I have some mutual funds. I do not have individual stocks. So part of my goal then is to save, or is to have my money grow. But if you put your money in the bank right now, the interest rate is so low, you really are not seeing people's money grow in banks, which is why people have been turning to the stock market. I don't play the stock market. Instead, to see my money grow, I've just been really focused on paying down my credit cards, because if I'm not paying that 24% every single month on my debts that I still have on the cards, I'm saving. That's a saving. And then eventually I'll have no cards, and I can take all that money and save it and move it. And the goal is, so credit cards down, I'm paying them off. And the goal is to buy a house. So that's the next goal, is to, again, I've told you, I've been saving during the pandemic. Every single month when my paycheck comes, I just don't even see the money, just go straight to a savings account. And I just try to budget off a smaller amount every month. And since it's almost 2 years, I've just been putting money away. With this pandemic, I've been paying off credit cards and just trying to see that pot of money grow so I can have a down payment for a condo. I don't think I can afford a house. There's a lot of other costs that comes with home, like a physical home ownership, like a residential single family house. I prefer to live in a building and have like a collectively decide on landscaping, collectively decide on other costs. But yeah, credit card debt down, and I'm saving up money for a house, for a condo. That's the immediate goal right now.
Okay, I like that. I feel like you're doing what you need to do now for the future.
I'm adulting. Hashtag adulting.
Yes, we love that. So I wanted to know, have you ever worked in like PR finance? And if so, what was your experience? Or have you ever worked for like a finance company, like writing articles for them, writing blogs for them, anything of that sort at all?
I have never worked for like a finance company doing public relations or editorial work for them. Again, in my head, that's a conflict of interest. I want to be in the media, in the organizations that not writes for these companies, but writes about those companies. Because part of it, again, is as someone whose goal is to inform the public, I want to be able to scrutinize those companies from the outside. It's much harder to scrutinize those companies from the inside. And as a reporter, you have that possibility. So I have not worked in-house, but as a result, I've written stories about PayPal and Venmo. I haven't written about Robinhood and some of those investment vehicles, but I do write. I have written about like Google Pay and anything that's a mobile device, anything you can purchase through a phone. I write about some of that e-commerce kind of story. So I've written about finance, but not for finance companies. That is something I don't want to do, because I'm not interested in working for in-house for one of these companies.
Okay. So if you were to tell your younger self, like if you were to give your younger self financial advice, what is something that you would say?
I tell myself that every day. If I could just go back, I would definitely say try to limit credit card use, period. Credit card is debt. And it's important to have some debt, because we don't always have the money we need. And you need to have credit, because they only give you a house if you can show you have a credit history, right? They only let you buy a car if you can show you have credit history. So you need to have a credit card, unfortunately, in our world. But I would go tell myself, only ever have one. I have like 4 or 5 now that I'm trying to pay off, right? Only have one. Always pay it off every month. Like, don't spend more of your monthly budget than you have. If you can't pay off your credit card at the end of the month, don't make that purchase. I would also just save up, right? I remember my uncle saying, hey, you want to go on vacation, put money aside, $25 a month. And when you have the money, that's when you go on vacation. You don't charge the vacation, and you don't spend all that money in your credit card first, because then if you don't pay it back, that vacation now costs you again 2-3 times the amount. So it's a matter of, you have to do some planning. And when you are a survivor, you wake up every morning, you're like, I just need to eat today. And you're like, I just need some money. So you're always kind of using up the money right away. But if you're planning in advance, you can put, okay, I know that I'm going to have to hustle this month, but let me put $10 aside for this expense, this emergency. So I would just plan, I would just save up for the things I want versus use a credit card immediately for the things that I want. And then that's the other thing, needs versus want. Do you really, really need it? Or is it really a want? Could you wait? And I find that I'm still, you learn with time, delayed gratification is always better to a degree. So if you save up for it, I think you'll enjoy it more at the end because you're not worried about paying it off. It's already paid off. So sometimes it's having that patience, planning ahead, being smart about what you actually charge with a credit card, shopping for interest rates if you can. Yeah, there's a lot of things I would do different, but it's definitely saving. The other thing I would do differently is I graduated from college with a lot of student loans. I'm happy that some of the students here have thought about not graduating with student loans, so they've kind of worked that into their schedule. I took out loans and I still worked because I went to a much more expensive university. But what I would have done, and it's not easy for everyone, and it wasn't easy for me, which is why I didn't do it. But I might have bit the bullet and moved back in with my parents for 6 months to a year and not spend money on rent, because that extra money in rent could have gone towards those early student loan payments. And maybe I would have knocked out my college loans much sooner. And I believe I'm still paying for college after all these years. So that's the other thing I would have done differently. If you keep asking me, I keep telling you, there's a lot of things I would have done differently. I would have kept the budget every month. I only have this amount of money. I can only spend this. It's a lot of things I would have done differently, and I would have been happier earlier. That said, I don't regret anything because I've done a lot of great things. I'm paying for it. I'm still paying for them, but I did a lot of great things.
So I think my final question is, what are some tips that you would give to college students who are watching this, who may have been taking out student loans, who might be using credit cards to pay for school, because that is a common thing. What advice would you give them about finances or tips that you wish someone had told you when you were in college?
Well, to be honest, everybody told me what to do. I just didn't listen. So my advice to students is when caring adults and caring advisors tell you this is our suggestion for money management, listen, because we've been there. We're just trying to avoid you the anxiety and the headache. I have been, Dalia, moments where I definitely have overdrawn my bank account. I've had friends lend me money because I'm short on my rent that morning because my bank just overdrew because it was a direct payment. All of a sudden I can't pay my rent, right? So I had to borrow money just to meet my rent because, depending on how your pay cycle falls, you may not be on the first of the month. You may be on a Friday every 2 weeks. And if you're on a 2-week schedule, the first of the month may be that Monday, but you don't get paid till Friday, right? What do you do in those 4 days when your landlord is expecting the rent? So part of it is, so my advice to young people is try to keep a budget. If you know that from school work, you're only making $200 a month, if you can eat on campus, you hustle. You have to always find the most affordable food. You have to find, it's unfortunate that there haven't been campus events because that's what we all did, right? We all went for pizza nights and that was dinner somewhere. Wherever had a pizza night, we showed up. Sometimes it might have been a stir fry or something you eat on campus. I work all the time. I work weekends. I work this morning. I do any freelance work I can do just to make extra cash. I would limit credit cards to just one. I would definitely follow the advice of only putting almost 10% of my allowable credit spending on that card, so you can budget paying for it at the end of the month. Or if you can't budget paying for the entire amount, only plan ahead that it's only going to take you 2 payments, for example, to pay for something, so you're not paying an exorbitant interest rate over time. If you can have roommates and live with family, have roommates and live with family the first couple of years after college to reduce your rent load. I would say, I just took, I mean, it's tough. I can't think of easier. It's going to be tough. It's not easy. It's not easy to come out of poverty and save money, right? I just take as many jobs as possible, but I'm smart about it. As a director of internships, what I tell students is take jobs that will open up doors for your next job, because that way you're building skills that when you get to the next job, you can get paid more because you're coming in with better skills and skills that someone else that they're looking for doesn't have. Again, there's certain ways to move up in someone's career, and it's just by working harder and being smart about the work you get, be smart about the people you meet so they can get you into those opportunities, and then learning how to negotiate salary. I've learned to do that more recently because I have a body of work, I have a Rolodex of contacts, I have how I comport myself. People want to hire me. So I'm able then to negotiate salaries. If I were still in journalism and I were a senior writer, I could be right near that $100,000 mark, 95,000, for example. I don't make that in the state of Nevada. But you kind of have to plan ahead and always search for that next job, because part of my plans are, or not my plans here, but the plans in general were, I need to always make myself marketable so I can get that job that's going to pay me more so I can pay off my student loans. It's always about making more money so I can pay off the debt I have. Once I pay off I still have about 10 years left of student loans, maybe more. But once all that's paid off, I'm just going to buy more property. And then you start thinking about other investment vehicles. How can I then generate money for that retirement? Like, I need to then have income from my retirement. So there isn't one advice except to listen to the people who give you advice. Save your money. Don't spend more than you have. Limit your credit card use. Have only one credit card. Continue gaining skills so that each time you get a new job, you're getting paid more for each job because you're bringing skills that someone else doesn't have. So they have to pay you for those skills. And yeah, and just be smart about where you live. If it entails moving in with roommates and going back home for a year or two until you can pay down some debt, I would do that, because there is nothing like having that peace of mind that you don't have to worry about student loans. You may consider living in places that are more affordable. I've lived in New York. I don't need to live in New York anymore. And I'll always be a New Yorker. No one can ever take that away from me. But I don't need to live in New York because I don't want to pay those prices. It's great as a young person, travel, go to LA, go to New York, but then you're going to have roommates. And then just make that work, because you still I'm not saying don't live your life as a young person. I would not have changed anything, even all the heartache I had with all that debt. But I would have done it differently. I probably would have taken more time to pay off debt. I would not have partied as much. I would have, again, paid cash whenever possible and not use my credit card. If you can go when you go to ATMs, think about all those fees, right? Don't go to ATMs that charge you $3 fees. Try to do everything where you can avoid fees. There was something that Susie Orman would say, you have to pay yourself first, which means that, again, that means avoiding fees. If it means paying off a debt so you can avoid $100 fee, pay that, because you just lost $100 if you don't do it that way. Make sure that you make money for yourself first, and then figure out how you want to spend it. But I still feel like a college student sometimes, because I literally eat very basic minimum food just so I can have more money at the end of the month, like spaghetti, tortillas, eggs, peanut butter. So I can save extra $100. I don't drink Starbucks. I don't go to Starbucks, right? Why would I spend $5 when I can just buy a tin of like 5-pound coffee and have coffee for free in my house for the rest of my life? I don't go to Starbucks, right? I don't spend extra money on some things that I couldn't make at home. That's always my theory. If I can make it at home, I'm not going to spend money on it. So it's just kind of switching. Just think about your goals. If your dream is to travel, save up to travel, but don't get into debt to travel. I don't want to get into debt anymore. Like, I'm done. If I don't have money for it, I'm not doing it. I have a little bit of debt, but if I can't pay it off at the end of the month, I'm done. It took me 42 years almost to get here, but I'm here. I've arrived. And now hopefully you guys will listen to me and realize that again, I did a lot of great things, but I've had like $20,000 in credit card debt. And when that happens, it really curtails your, like, anxiety comes in, depression comes in, because you're worried about your credit card, and then you're worried about your student loans, and you're worried about your rent. If you can have less credit card debt, that will ease a lot of your headaches over time.
All right. Well, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to allow me to interview you for our podcast. Do you have any final words of encouragement for anyone, or anything else that you would like to say?
Hang in there. Hang in there. It's doable. It's completely doable. Just think about the goals. Think about the goals, and the goals would be a very happy and stable life in the future. And if you think about where you want to be, you will think, how much money do I need to get there? But how much money can I avoid in debt? And you'll begin to start planning, and talk to the people around you who have been successful, and ask them for their money managing tips. Some people have apps they use. Some people use their checkbook. Some people keep Excel sheets online. Some people are very successful. So I would say, talk to the adults in your life who you feel have their stuff together, and ask them for what they do.
Okay, thank you. Definitely. So thank you guys for watching our podcast today. Make sure that you like this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and we'll see you next time.